It's time for another episode of the Cattle Innovation Station podcast. I'm your host, Baxter Whitworth, and as always, joining me today is your other host, Paul Hayes. In this episode, we're going to be discussing how to evaluate cattle in your herd and why it's important to know how to do that. Welcome to the Cattle Innovation Station podcast,
bringing you the innovative new ways of the cattle industry.
We're your hosts, Baxter Whitworth and Paul Hayes. Together, we're going to be interviewing leaders within the cattle industry.
Here on this podcast, our focus is honoring God and innovating the cattle industry. Get ready to listen, learn, and laugh as we help innovate the cattle industry.
Let's get innovating. If you truly want your livestock to perform at their best, make sure to contact Vance Aaron, the owner and operator of AFL Livestock Solutions. Vance specializes in magnawave treatments that use pulsed electromagnetic fields, or PEMF, to relieve pain, swelling, and inflammation, caused to help your livestock feel their best. In addition to livestock, Vance can also help you feel better. His treatment works great on sore muscles and joints, along with other mobility issues. His treatments are FDA approved to treat migraines. Aaron Family Livestock Solutions has helped many exhibitors make it to the backdrop with their proven magnawave treatments. Don't miss your next backdrop picture. Give Vance a call at 903-720-3184. Again, that's 903-720-3184. Or find them on Facebook at AFL Livestock Solutions. Well, welcome back to another episode. We're glad to be back. In this episode, our guest for this episode is Mr. Chris Mullinix. He lives in Manhattan, Kansas, where he is on a faculty in Department of Animal Science at Kansas State University and serves as an advisor to the KSU Purebred Beef Cattle Unit. Born and raised on a diversified livestock and farming operation in Central Maryland, he has received his animal science degree at K-State, where he was a member of the 1995 National Champion Livestock Judging Team and was recognized as the contest high individual. Over 27 years of leading collegiate judging squads has resulted in more than 50 national contest winning teams, including national championship teams in both livestock judging and meat evaluation. Mr. Mullinix, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Baxter, I'm excited to be here. Really love what you and Paul are doing, and just excited to be part of it.
Yes, sir. We're excited to have you. We've been waiting for this interview for a long time. So, Paul, could you go ahead and get us started on getting to know our guest?
I'd love to. So, knowing what Baxter said and your lovely Polo, we know you're a huge K-State fan, and we're wondering what one of your favorite traditions of K-State is.
Well, I bleed purple. You guys have that right, and it's been a big part of my life. Going back to being an undergraduate student here, there's a number of traditions. I guess I would probably maybe hit you with two sides of it. And when I think of a tradition on this campus, probably the first thing that pops to my mind revolves around athletics and sporting events, and we have a tradition at our athletic events to do what is called the Wabash Cannonball. And that you'll see it on TV when we have nationally televised games. It is obvious that something is going on in the crowd, and that all revolves around when our marching unit, when the band plays the Wabash Cannonball. So there's a lot of history dating all the way back to a fire that occurred on campus, and how that came to be a popular song played at sporting events. But it's very, very unique to K-State. Second part, though, when I hear the word tradition and K-State, it very much takes me to our animal science department and the tradition of leaders from the beef cattle industry that have played such a significant role for decades now in making K-State the educational opportunity it is for students, but also the impact that they had outside of the classroom and off of the campus in developing the livestock industry, but in particular the beef cattle industry, and some of those, historic faculty members and stakeholders of K-State that have just been instrumental in the progression of many, many breeds of beef cattle, but as an industry as a whole. So, when I think of tradition, I very quickly go to the beef cattle industry and those leaders that we've been fortunate enough to have here for so long that have impacted the industry the way they have.
That's great. I have a few things to follow up on that. So you mentioned the leaders, and that's something great. I think, when a college can put out great leaders, that really reflects well on them. The next thing, you mentioned the Wabash Cannonball. That's
yeah.
That was Dr. We asked Dr. Mosier the same question last year when we interviewed him, and that was his answer.
Oh, no kidding.
Wabash Cannonball.
Yeah. So I believe it. Once you are, I grew up in Maryland, and I couldn't have told you what the Wabash Cannonball was before I came to K-State, and now my children knew how to do the Wabash Cannonball before they could walk. So it is absolutely a tradition that's unique to K-State.
That's great.
That is. Another question that we always like to ask, or normally ask people for icebreakers, is a favorite place that they've ever visited.
Oh, one thing in getting the opportunity to judge livestock shows, and it takes you all across the country, and I would tell you there's so many spectacular parts to this country that I have had the good fortune to visit, and to narrow it down to one or two places that I enjoy visiting, I'm actually gonna probably start with one that pops into my mind quicker than any. And I briefly mentioned a second ago, but I grew up in the state of Maryland, but I've been in Kansas since the early 90s, and we try on occasion to get back to see my parents and extended family, and when we do, a place that we like to go, I'm not a big beach guy, but Ocean City, Maryland has always been such a relaxing and a fun place, and we as kids used to take a family trip there every summer, and I think that's always been something that was special to me because it was a family thing, and now getting the chance on occasion to go back with my family and take my kids to those same locations, that's been a really, really enjoyable thing to do away from the livestock side of things. I will tell you, though, one places that I really, really enjoy, though, you guys know how to do it in Texas, and I love the opportunity to come and judge at your major shows, and not just your major shows, even county fairs, and the opportunities that I've had, at all levels and across your state. It's always a joy to visit and work with young people in that part of the country.
So you just brought up judging county fairs, and I listened to a podcast that you were on the sort, right? You went on the sort, and you talked about how you still love judging county fairs. Could you elaborate on why, even though you've judged some of the biggest shows in the country, why you still like judging county fairs?
It's a great question, Baxter, and I tell people a lot. To me, and And what's crazy is I think there's a group of people in the livestock world that think that once you do start judging at major national shows, that you no longer judge county shows. And that may be that way for some people out there. I hope that's never that way for me, because I love both. And I will always say I love both, but for different reasons. When you go to a major show, whether that's a major open show like your International Brahman Show in Houston, or one of your major steer shows or junior livestock shows, there is such a huge number of livestock that there's a pace that needs to occur. And ultimately, enjoyment in those shows probably revolves a little more around the quality of the livestock, whereas my enjoyment of county fairs is about the people. And to me, that's such a big part of what we do. The cattle are ultimately, our avenue to get an opportunity to interact with people that have, the same love that we do, the same passions we do. And that's why I enjoy the county fair, is because it takes me home a little bit. When I was your guys' age, nothing meant more to my brothers and I than our county fair. And I hope, as I continue to judge, I hope I never forget that. I think that's important to me. When I walk into the arena at a county fair, I talk a lot about how important it is to me to understand that, yes, this may be my 20th county fair of the year, but it is the one and only county fair for every young person that walks in the ring that day.
That's true.
And they deserve every ounce of my effort, because they've spent 364 days preparing for that day. And that's what makes it fun. And the fun part about county fairs is the community support, and just the people that it brings out. And as a result, it becomes an opportunity for me to interact with people, probably a little bit more than you do, at some of the really large national events or your state, majors. So it's that's why I love it. It's the interaction with people.
All right.
Have you been looking for a place to buy top quality AI sire semen or collect a bull of your own? Well, look no further than Elgin Breeding Services. Located in Elgin, Texas, Elgin Breeding Service is not only one of the best breeding services in the business, but also has superior customer service. Contact them at ebsbull@elginbreedingservices.com or by phone at 512-285-2019. Again, that's 512-285-2019. And visit their website at elginbreedingservice.com.
So, we have some questions that we like to ask everybody at the beginning of the podcast. And will you tell us some of the events in your life that have shaped you into who you are today? I know you've kind of transitioned from the judging coach into kind of a different role now. So will you just kind of tell us what's taken you to this point in your life?
Sure. Yeah, I mentioned earlier, Baxter, that I grew up in Maryland. I am the 8th generation born on our family farm. When I was young, much like you guys, I got involved through youth programs, and in particular, we showed all species, growing up, but the cattle were always, at the forefront of what we did. And my brothers and I really got, tied into Hereford cattle growing up, and had a passion for that breed, and we grew a small cow herd in that process, and fortunately it opened up so many doors for us. And I would say those youth programs, starting at a 4-H level, the mentors that I had, the judging coaches that I had through those youth programs, and then leading up into eventually my involvement in the National Junior Association and some of the opportunities that I was given as a junior board member, and at a national level, those all were really key in opening my eyes to the things that I didn't even know existed related to my future education, judging programs, competing at a collegiate level. All of those things I was pretty naive to. I wasn't exposed to it in Maryland, but I was fortunate to have great people that got me excited about those types of programs. And I would say probably if we think about events and timelines, when I was junior in high school, I was involved in a state livestock judging team that gave me a chance to go and compete at a regional and national level. And I started to meet some people, one of which was Dr. Scott Shockey, who would ultimately be my judging coach here at K-State. And he also judged our state fair in that time frame. And, I probably prior to that hadn't necessarily, considered coming this far away to go to college. But I started to see the opportunities and feel those things out through those other activities I was involved with. And it was a bit of a leap of faith, but we came out to visit K-State for the first time when I was a junior in high school, and it was, I think I knew pretty quickly that that's where I needed to be. And so that was a huge event in shaping my life, was just coming here and then being involved, through the classroom, through activities outside of class, and in particular judging teams that really shaped the direction that I would end up going. So, from there, I had the great fortune to be on faculty at Butler Community College in El Dorado, Kansas for 16 years. That was my first job. And I coached a judging team there and taught in their agriculture department. And what a blessing that was. And so many spectacular young people that passed through our program and are doing amazing things today. And when my coach, Dr. Shockey, stepped down from coaching and that opportunity opened up, I was very fortunate to get the call and ask if I was interested. And now I've been here at K-State about 13 years and had a chance to coach teams here for over a decade, and still involved in coaching our meat animal evaluation team. I've taken on an active role with our purebred beef unit and a lot of teaching, classroom teaching, but I guess to lay things out there, that's kind of where I am today, and lots of little spots in that path that, were the good Lord was watching over me to give me great opportunities and people in my life that helped point me in a direction that has been nothing short of amazing. So I have a wife and 3 beautiful children. My wife is a K-State grad as well, did a master's degree here as well in ruminant nutrition, and she's now an ag teacher here at Manhattan High School. And then my 3 kids that are starting to get involved in livestock as well. So it's been a blessing. It's hard to believe that a kid from Central Maryland has had the opportunities that I've had, but it's really been it has been a fun ride.
That's great. Yeah, you're right. You definitely wouldn't expect someone from Maryland to come and be a judging coach or anything else, but there's agriculture all over the United States, all over the world too, and places you wouldn't expect. So I hate to kind of bring it down from a less positive note, but what's your biggest concern for the future of the beef industry?
Yeah, it's a bit of a loaded question, I guess, but there's some things, and I probably am going to stick maybe a little more in our circles and the things that you and Paul are involved with, maybe a good portion of your listening audience is involved with. And, in my time of growth in particular through livestock judging programs and competition, I unfortunately continue to see a divide between the show world and the commercial world of beef cattle production. And to me, that makes me nervous a little bit. And I don't think that divide, I personally don't think that divide needs to be there. I don't think there's any reason why cattle that are successful in the show ring should not also have the ability to be successful in production and in the commercial sector, if that's where we want to put them. And yet, I think we see that disconnect a little bit, and we're probably in a better place than some other species are in that regard. If you look at some of our peers, so to speak, in the sheep or swine or goat arena, where there's probably even more separation. But that's probably a concern that I have, and that's why I love what you and Paul are doing. I think this is exciting, and we need young people that are growing up in these programs that are involved in both sides, that can continue to bridge that gap and make sure that we are producing the kind of cattle that can work in both venues. And there's no reason that we can't, in my opinion.
Have you been looking for Brahman cattle with a good genetic background? Contact 79 Cattle Company, selling reliable Brahman replacement heifers, Brahman show prospects, and Brahman bulls. Contact Taylor Tate at 210-241-4511. Again, that's 210-241-4511. Or contact Mallory Tate at 210-861-0155, 210-861-0155.
I love that, and so we're actually going to talk about that a little more in just a little bit, and so I'm really excited about that. I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that's a big problem too. That I think the show ring should mirror what will happen in the,
and vice versa. I think we need to be sometimes I think I have some wonderful friends and people that I think the world of, that are incredibly successful, that I've heard say things like, we're not going to use him, he's just a showboat. And, so it happens both ways. I think, as you get that disconnect, you see people on both sides, of the aisle, so to speak, that talk negatively about the other, and, just because our cattle don't look exactly the same. And, I think there is things that the seed stock and show ring can learn from the commercial sector. And I think there's things that the commercial sector can learn from seed stock production. I think it's important that we have the ability, to see the value of both.
I agree. I do. I think that's important.
Absolutely.
Anyways, we get to move on to the part of the interview that makes your episode unique, and that's the questions that are unique to you. But I guess we want to start off with, why even learn to evaluate cattle if you're if you run a cattle operation? So why do you think it's important that you learn to evaluate cattle?
Oh, I don't think anyone can be a true master breeder without the ability to evaluate. And when I say evaluate, I think many people, because of my background and the things that I do day to day, I think most are quick to say, well, he's talking about phenotypic evaluation. And that's a big part of it. But I also think it's important that you develop as an evaluator of all things at your disposal. That's genetic evaluation. That's pedigree evaluation. That is understanding performance records, understanding, all the technologies that are at your disposal as a breeder, and becoming great at evaluating differences to make your program better. But obviously from a phenotype standpoint, I think it is incredibly critical that you have the ability to analyze your own livestock, to analyze other livestock, that you have a potential interest in utilizing those genetics back within your own herd. I think those are all really critical traits or critical things that you need to be able to do as a breeder. So, when I think of the importance of evaluation, I think it's the need to be able to be critical on your own livestock, to be able to analyze, because we can all, my dad used to call it, get a little barn blind, like our own cattle. There's not much point in doing this if you can't like your own, but you also have to be able to truthfully analyze your own if you're going to make improvement, and to me, traits of importance phenotypically, things like feet and leg structure, things that influence practicality and doability, like frame and body type, those are all things that are not always easy to evaluate, but I think are very critical, if you're going to be a successful breeder moving forward. Because mating decisions are always going to revolve around complementary decision making and understanding what's good about one animal, where their strengths lie, where their negatives may lie, and becoming a master breeder by looking to improve on those negatives.
I agree. I definitely see what you're saying. If you can't understand what makes a good animal, then it's going to be hard to do that. So that.
Yeah, one thing I would caution you a little bit with is, and one thing that I have learned over the years is, quote unquote, a good animal. Does every person think the same animal is the best animal?
Yes.
It's part of what makes showing fun too. As you get different opinions at different shows. But one thing that I've learned and I have loved teaching to students is the understanding that your breeding program, your environment, your marketplace all dictates what a good animal is for you or for Paul or for me. And that may be different for each one of us because we're marketing our animals different. You have a different environment in which you're trying to raise those cattle compared to what I would. So where I start to put my emphasis needs to be different than where you do. And that's healthy. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Doesn't mean you're producing the wrong kind and I'm producing the right kind. And I think sometimes, especially young evaluators, have trouble with that until they've gotten a chance to see a lot of different operations and learn that, hey, you know what? His or her marketplace is driven by these 2 or 3 traits being most important. And that's okay. As long as you understand that, you can make proper selection decisions.
Yes, sir. That makes sense.
Touching on kind of what you just said, the importance of ranchers knowing which traits are important in their herd. And I know you just talked about how it's your area and how you market, but also some other ways.
Yeah. So, again, I think knowing, what is important to your breeding program, what can make you profitable, is definitely going to change a priority list from one breeder to another. And I think the easiest piece to that puzzle would, or easy thing to describe, is those breeders who know that their marketplace is driven by, breeders that are really in tune with EPDs or performance values versus someone else whose marketplace may be more to people that are searching a certain phenotype. And in that process, you have to be disciplined enough to understand, hey, this is where I sell my cattle. This is what drives income for me. So this needs to be my priority. Whereas your neighbor might do it slightly different because, they have a different way that they're marketing their cattle. So don't think that, again, one is right or wrong. But on the surface, it can maybe be confusing to some people. Well, wait a minute, you're producing two totally different kinds. Hey, if both of them are making a living doing it, then they're producing the right kind for themselves.
That's absolutely right. You have to drive from what the customer and consumer will pay for, and so if you can't do that, then you can't make a profit.
EP Cattle Company. Owned by Eddie Wilson, EP Cattle Company is home of Sir Rouse Handshake. Rouse Handshake is a sound-structured, heavy-muscle bull that is really bold-ribbed. So it comes with no surprise that he is a Fort Worth and San Antonio Junior Show Division Champion and Rio Grande Valley Open Show Division Champion. He is a grandson of BRC Noble and JDH Shank Manso, and is also a great-grandson of Mr. H. Elijah Manso. You can contact Eddie Wilson or Nicole Wilson on Facebook at EP Cattle Company. So remember, if you're looking for some well-performing registered Brahman genetics, contact Eddie Wilson on Facebook.
We just talked about how it's important, but how does a rancher know which traits are important in their herd?
I think that happens over time, Baxter. I think we can always start with some traits that better be important to all herds. Herd health, reproductive efficiency and soundness. Those are things, no matter what your marketplace is, if you can't get your cows bred, doesn't matter what other traits are there, right? We start thinking about traits of importance, and I think we can all agree on, 3 or 4 things right away that we better say, if that's not in check, none of the rest of this matters, right? But then I think it takes a little time for every program to develop their niche and figure out what is going to eventually be their profit maker. I think there are still certain traits that we can all agree on, that are going to consistently have some value. One that I think most all producers would tell you we need to have some cow herd longevity. Certainly young cattle have the genetic potential to generate improvement. But one thing we know in the beef cattle world is that there's a lot of investment into those cattle before they ever go into production. So I need that female to have a reasonably long, productive life in order to pay for herself. And there are definitely traits that are going to be important to make sure that happens. Things like soundness of feet and legs, which I will tell you, I've coached a lot of judging teams, and evaluating structure is probably the most difficult thing for people to do. Why? Because there's a lot of parts to it. There's feet, there's pasterns, there's joints, there's shoulder angle, there's so many things that influence soundness of structure and ultimately comfort of movement. But it can play a big role in how long that female, stays productive within your herd. But then beyond that, we've talked about reproductive soundness and their ability to breed back, and we need to have those things in check, and then we can move forward and say, okay, I'm going to make my living selling commercial Angus bulls, and I have come to find that my biggest customer base is, commercial breeders that need calving ease. So now calving ease, birth weight related things are maybe going to drive some of my decisions more than what someone else's who may be marketing in a different fashion is. So again, as you think about how does a producer do it, I think it starts with that initial checklist of things that we would all agree with that have to be in place in order to have just a sound production system. And then it becomes, hey, where am I marketing and how am I, developing my program so that I can be profitable, and what traits are going to really drive, value in my cattle.
Right. That's true. Thank you for joining us. We're gonna go ahead and wrap this episode up, and I've enjoyed it. 30 minutes went by pretty fast in my mind, and I've definitely learned. We've learned a lot. We've set a good foundation, and we'll come back with another episode. So, thank you for listening to the Cattle Innovation Station podcast, and keep innovating the cattle industry.
Hello, guys. Thank you for listening to the Cattle Innovation Station podcast. We want to make this podcast better. So if you would, please like this episode and leave us feedback in the comment section. Something else that helps make this podcast better is when you respond to the polls. So if you're able, please respond to our polls. Help us make this podcast as good as possible. Thank you, God bless, and have a good day.
Thank you for listening to the Cattle Innovation Station podcast.
We hope you enjoyed the show.
We're your hosts, Baxter Whitworth.
And Paul Hayes.
Remember our key verse, Proverbs 16:3.
Commit to the Lord whatever you do, and He will establish your plans.
Thank you for listening.